Owen Eversley seemed to be a seasoned agent. I assumed he had been a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. before. He couldn't be over his mid-40s, but he definitely wasn't under 30 either. He was fit, even though he wasn't very broad, but I could tell he was in shape. We had been running for too long for him not to be. I remembered his continuous insistence on getting me to run on that damned treadmill. Now I was actually glad I had endured that. Agent Eversley guided me through the forest that surrounded the base with an orientation ability worthy of a bloodhound. Even in the dark, he could tell if we were deviating from the path by a mere meter. Maybe the moon or the stars gave him an indicator of where we should run. He held a gun with both hands, ready to shoot on sight if he needed to. Maria Hill had informed us that they had turned off the movement and heat sensors so Ultron couldn't detect us. But he wanted to be sure. "We're almost there," he said at some point. I had no idea how he knew, but sure enough, in a couple of minutes, I could see the power center. It was a small room in the middle of a clear. It was surrounded by a fence, surely electrified. Agent Eversley got even more alert. He made a sign so I would stop, and I stood close behind him. The moon was the only light that showed us our surroundings. On the tree line, we were safe, covered by the thickness of the forest. But we knew that the second we decided to set foot outside, we would be completely exposed. And there was a light inside the power center. Someone was inside. "Maybe it's a worker," I suggested. "A Saturday night in a place that needs none whatsoever?" he questioned. "I don't think so." "Did the scan show robots here?" I asked. "The scan couldn't reach this far," he said. "Great. Come on," he said, moving towards the hut. As silently as we could manage, we jumped over the fence. Agent Eversley threw his jacket to the top so we wouldn't get hurt with the razors, and we rushed to take cover under the window. He took a peek and squatted again. He looked stern, maybe even confused. "What's wrong?" I whispered. He licked his lips and looked at me. "It's empty." I frowned. If it was empty, why was the light on? Someone could have forgotten to switch it off, sure, but the whole situation made me feel weary. "Should we go in?" I asked. He took a second to answer me, but ended up nodding. He stayed close to the ground, walked cautiously to the door, and opened it. He made me stay back and he went in. I listened closely. He didn't make any noise. A minute went by, and my heart started to pound faster. I was committed to staying put until he told me to. For once in my life, I wanted to do what I was told. This wasn't a situation I could fuck around with. "Kira," he called from inside in a low whisper that carried. "Come in, it's clear." I stood up and walked in, still alert of corners and windows. It was a small room. One desk at the beginning of the room welcomed me. That was where the guard must have sat when there were people working. The room was divided then by a stack of servers, their cables organized by a chaotic mind, separated by colors sometimes and others by thickness. I walked behind the servers. There were some terminals there. Those were the ones where the program I was supposed to crack was. Agent Eversley was in front of one of the terminals, starting to code something, but as far as I had gathered during our training sessions, his skills with the computer didn't go beyond playing Spider. "Right," he said, stepping away from the terminal. He had only turned it on and tried to insert the password, and failed. "Do your thing, I'll keep watch. Hurry up." "Yeah." I took my wallet from my vest pocket and grabbed the die trick. I had never used it to hack into an energy plant, but I didn't think it was beyond its capabilities. I plugged it in, and the crack started. A small window popped and informed me of the different possibilities of actions I could do on that terminal through the D-trick. Control Program A, Control Program B, Control Program C. The names weren't really helpful. I hated how some programmers were like this. In my experience, I had come so far as to see hackers use silly names like Sandwich, Dick, or Mega Man. Check in the desk for a paper that says what program does what, I told Agent Eversley. He shot me a glare. I widened my eyes, urging him to do as he was told. Please? I hesitated. He rolled his eyes without much emotion and walked over to the desk, leaving me alone on the side of the servers. There aren't any drawers, he informed me from the other side. Under the board, stuck to the table, I offered. He returned some seconds later with a paper on his hand and a frown on his face. I smiled sheepishly, ready to give him a lame excuse. It wasn't my first time doing social hacking. Good job, he said before I had time to open my mouth. Keep going. And he left and stood guard by the door. I checked the paper. Program B was the one that I wanted, the one that led some of the plant's energy to the base. I quickly checked how it worked. I'd only have to shut it down to cause a blackout on the base. Agent Eversley, I called. Do I do it? There was no response. Agent? Nothing. I took the gun Miss Hill had given me and charged it. My gut told me to take the Dietrich with me, so I stashed it in one of my pockets of my vest. I raised the gun and walked cautiously to the other side of the room, where Agent Eversley stood in silence, staring to the outside. What's wrong? I whispered. He shushed me, trying to hear better. I stood next to the server, squinting at the darkness outside the door, not daring to go any closer, and I listened. There was nothing. No, wait. I suddenly heard something, like a whoosh of wind. I then remembered the Maximoff twins and how I didn't want to repeat my last encounter with them. I prayed the whoosh had only been that. The wind. But my mind changed the second I saw Agent Eversley flying back inside the room, one of the Ultron robots grabbing him by the neck. The robot threw him to the side, and I heard how his head hit the wall hard. Now, what are you doing here? Ultron asked. They all had the same deep voice, but this body was slightly different from the Legionnaires that he had stolen from Mr. Stark. Maybe it was one of the ones he had made at the base. I wondered how many he had now. I licked my lips. I came to give you the drive, I said. He tilted his head. It was eerie, the way he imitated human behavior. Have you? He said. Where is it? I gestured to the servers with my head and got out of his way. He walked past me and took a second to look for it while I rushed to Agent Eversley's side. Ultron didn't find the drive, but he saw the prompt on the console. What were you doing here? He asked aloud from the other side of the room. But I had already grabbed the grenade that Agent Eversley had hanging from his belt, unpinned it, and threw it. Oh, I heard him saying, almost sighing. The grenade exploded, and I covered Agent Eversley. Still, the explosion pushed me forward, slamming me against the wall and throwing some random pieces of hardware my way. I didn't know which were the servers and which were part of Ultron's carry-on. Shit, I whispered as I picked myself up. I checked on Agent Eversley. He was still breathing. At least, his chest kept going up and down. I was going to think of that as a win. I stared at the servers, now gone. It seems they've gone boom after all. I looked at Agent Eversley again. There was no way I could carry him to the rendezvous. I would have to call for help. I pressed my comms. Hello? I called. Atwood here. We're gonna need some help at the power center. Agent Eversley was knocked out. Ultron was gone, and the power at the base had gone out the second the servers had gone kaput. So there was nothing for me to do except wait. I walked outside, checking my body carefully and seeing that everything hurt. But not too much, so nothing was broken. The chill of the night felt nice. I hadn't realized how hot the room had gotten from the explosion. I sighed and breathed deep. and then I was pushed against the wall, a metallic hand grabbing my neck, stopping me from breathing correctly. "You shouldn't have done that," Ultron said. He must have sent another body the second I destroyed the former. "Has anyone ever told you that you sound like James Spader?" I managed to get out. "Why did you do this?" he said, sighing. "Now I'm going to have to kill your guardian." I closed my fist around his wrist and pulled away as much as I could, trying to breathe. "If you so much as touch her, I will upload Windows Vista to your hard drive and watch you burn." He, or it, didn't have any expression at all. Not of fear or amusement, but the threat seemed to make him hesitate, and he gave me a little more room to breathe. "Actions have consequences," he said. He had made up his mind, I realized. He was going to hurt Leslie, and I couldn't do anything about it. As soon as he said that, my vision became blurred. I thought I was fainting, but the one that fell to the floor was the robot. His figure was replaced by a more human one. I gasped for air and cleaned my eyes from Ultron's grease with my sleeve. "You okay?" Robert asked. I could see him clearly now. I grabbed my gun from the floor and looked at him. "Twice," I said. "Huh?" "Twice you saved my life," I said. I pointed my gun at him and his smile dropped as I took the shot.